Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast where film people film people. Today, I have my previous instructor, Michael Coleman, with me.
Hello,
Yay.
hello. Yay.
Welcome. I want to know how you first discovered your love for storytelling. Is it maybe a specific memory or moment?
Yeah, for me, it was actually really interesting. So I grew up much ages before you did, and it's not the bullying's any less. It was just different.
Right. Yes.
So I was bullied a lot as a kid. So I remember in the 8th grade, I got bullied so bad that I actually was sat at a different table away from the rest of the kids and all these different
Wow.
things. Yeah. And it was around this time I had taken one drama class just to fill my slate. And because I'd always liked acting, and I did a little bit in elementary school, but it was one of these places where I just started to understand people differently.
Right.
And it gave me a different chance just to survive in high school. So for me, it was just about learning how to, not necessarily empathize with my bullies, but understand them differently.
Right.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is a really, really powerful thing, like to understand how human behavior works. And so for me, I came by that. I'm also a giant nerd. Like in elementary school, I did plays, I did silly voices in front of my friends, and nobody ever thought you would do anything with it. It was just
Right.
something that we mimicked the favorite shows and movies and
Yeah.
things like that. So
Did you think at that point in life, I mean, obviously as a kid, you're like, yeah, of course I can do this forever. But when was it that you were actually like, I want to pursue this? Do you know?
yeah, I would have been in, oh gosh, it was either the 10th or 11th grade.
Yeah.
And it clicked for me differently. I started like learning from different like interviews or books, and I just approached it with a little bit more of a seriousness maybe than other people that were doing it in high school. And I remember doing plays, and the response I would get from the audience and that ability to make people think or
Right.
feel, it was so overwhelming. It was a level of euphoria that, it was hard to replicate. I didn't have any experience with it before.
And then how did you really start to pursue acting? Because I know for me, it was coming to your college.
Yeah.
And that's how I got my start. How was it for you?
It was different. It's interesting you say that. I've talked a lot about that this week with different colleagues. When we got started, we didn't really have that. Like we had these big theater schools, and it was predominantly theater training, and that was all we did. And there's it's not to disregard it or devalue it, because I think there's tremendous wealth in it. And as a matter of fact, I think people should still do it. But we didn't have any film, TV, or voiceover or anything like that. It was like something I grew up in a time when it was you go to school, and then all your teachers tell you, just do this for fun, because nobody ever does this for a
Right.
career.
Yeah.
And then I was like, this is the most insane post-secondary program ever. Like you would never go to dental school and then say, be careful, nobody ever becomes a dentist,
Right.
but thank
Yeah.
you for all your money. And you're like, that is so crazy. So I actually, for me, I knew early on, my mother was super supportive. And I grew up predominantly raised just by my mother. My parents separated when I was about 15, and we didn't have crazy amounts of money, and grew up in Surrey, 3 kid brothers, and all this sort of stuff. But we never wanted for anything. We had a good, happy life. But I just remember my mother never wanted me to have any obstacles or any ceilings on my career or my potential. Whatever made me happy, she wanted me to be able to do that as a living.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I had that really cool level of support early on, and furthermore to what I was saying earlier about theater schools, I actually dropped out of theater school because it
Wow.
was all you had was theater school, and I was very clear that I really want to focus on film, television, writing, voiceovers, all these things, and they were like, well, we don't do any of that, and I was like, I want to do the other stuff too, but I also want to do, anyway, I dropped out, and then I ended up hiring just a bunch of professional actors, and I was like, all my teachers told me this isn't real. You're clearly
yeah.
real. I'm poking and pinching you. I wouldn't really poke them or pinch
Right,
them,
of course.
but you're real. And so just teach me what you do. And then basically that's how I started my school. Is I like, what if I just got a bunch of people together who had lots of training, actually did it for a living, and we just showed people how to do that.
Yeah.
So
Was there many obstacles in having that idea and then actually making it a tangible thing?
crazy amounts of obstacles. So, it's to start a professional accredited institution, you have to go through regulatory bodies. So, we have all the same challenges and opportunities that every college and university has. So there's lots of government regulatory things, and it's expensive. There's a lot of things to get started, but at the end of the day, it was just one of those things we knew it would work. I also was doing it in a time where people told us it wouldn't work. But the more people told me it wouldn't work, the more I knew it would work. Like the more it made certain people uncomfortable, the more I knew, oh, this is the right thing. Yeah.
How did the name Story Institute come to be? Because it's a great name.
Oh, thanks.
It's exactly what it is. It's an institute about how to tell stories.
Yeah. So it's interesting you say I sat there I've worked at most of the different acting schools here in Vancouver, and I've taken training in Los Angeles and Vancouver and around the world. And when I sat down to make this was so I've opened other schools with other people, and we never really had an alignment in terms of vision or goals. Right. And I always wanted to create a place that I would go to as a student. So that doesn't always resonate necessarily with other business people who want to, they want the success of the school to be, evaluated by how much money do we bring in tuitions. Yeah. And I've always been, but I'm going to end up on set with these people. And if I can't look them in the eye, I don't care how much money we made. Like, I have to be able to say, see, these skills work.
Right.
So there wasn't always a direct alignment with that. So when I sat down, and it probably took me about 6 months of just sitting there with different words and ideas and playing with logos, and at the end of the day, my firm belief is that we just serve the story, which now sounds a little bit militant and oppressive when I say it out loud. But it's like, I always thought, how do we do something where we just serve the story? Like, how do we train people that the actor's not bigger than the story? The scene isn't bigger than the story. The story is the most powerful thing. Yeah. How do we honor that? And then, and it was either going to be Story Academy, Story Institute. There's so many, Story School, but that sounded silly.
Right, just a little bit.
Yeah. So for us, it was a case of how do we keep it simple? How do we keep it specific? And that was the most focused idea I could think of what we were trying to do.
I have, a similar story in just this podcast. It was idea after idea after idea. I'm like, this is what I have a vision, and I just want to talk to film people. Like, I just want to talk to people in the industry, not specific actors, not specifically directors, not specifically writers, just everyone. Yeah. And weeks and weeks, I was like thinking of different names, and I'm just giving a list to, my boyfriend and my best friends, and I'm like, what? Help me narrow this list down. And I had one that was just like film people, and everyone sort of liked that because it's simple, it's got a good ring, it's just film people. And I was like, great, we love it. And then we liked the idea of film people as like a little catch line.
I love it. I think it's genius.
Like hurt people, so it works. And then the logo was another whole thing.
Oh, for sure.
And I got really sick a couple weeks ago, and I had nothing to do but sit at my computer. I have a Visa gift card that has no money left on it. Yeah. And I use it for 1 month subscriptions. Oh, okay. So that, my credit card doesn't get charged afterwards. So I have it on Canva, and I'm just playing around. And then, I'm like, what about this little camera guy? And so I'm making like a little camera guy, and it all ended up working out. But I was stressed to the bone about this name and what to do, because even if this goes nowhere, it's a passion project, For sure. And I had a previous podcast that was just, I didn't care. It's called I Don't Care, and it was just for fun. Yep. And this is a little more than just for fun, so I've been putting a little bit more effort into it. And it all worked out, and now I love my little logo, and I love the name Film People. And so once you do take that time to figure it out, and then you find something you love, you're like, that's what it was supposed to be, and it works out. And everyone seems to, like it, just like Story Institute.
I think it's genius. I think it's a really, really smart idea.
Thank you.
I have every confidence this will be a big thing. I think you're going to do your grassroots thing, and I do. I think it's really smart.
I don't know if you still do this, but when I was applying to get into Story Institute, you either wanted a video or an essay.
We do.
On why you want to become an actor. Yeah. Why do you ask that? Why is it really important?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, I am adamant. So one of the reasons I created Story Institute is I wanted to create I was never an actor who had the right look or the right sound. So again, people are as mean as people have been in recent years. I think they were meaner when I got started.
Right.
And, I was too fat. I was too short. I sounded too nasally. And it's not like this is just in my head. These are real sentences people said to me.
Right.
And they were like, you're never going to work. Or you'll only do this, or you'll never do that. And I just kept thinking, I don't know, like most of my favorite actors growing up look like me, walk like me, sound like. Even to this day, most of my favorite actors don't look like actors in the sense that I think a lot of us think you have to be like this height, this chin, this jawline, whatever it is. So, I wanted to create a place where actors felt empowered to have more control over success or failure. And I actually don't even believe in failure. I believe there's success and opportunities to learn. So for me, it was a case of I wanted to create a space where actors knew you didn't have the right look. It wasn't about the right look or having the right luck. And while luck and look can factor, most of us that do this for a long period of time just learn how to do it differently. We're smart about how we approach it. We understand that we have business to business relationships with casting, with agents, things like that. We understand that there's for me, a phrase that I use now that I picked up after working with you was I say there's three types of actors. So there's solutions, there's problems, and there's furniture. So when we're holding a casting session, we have a situation. We have a great story. We have writers, producers, director, but our problem is we don't have any actors. So when an actor walks in and comes in and just provides a solution, it's like, oh my goodness, this person understands story. They have a great look. They're confident. They're capable of direction. They're professional. They understand the nuance of the story. Again, story. They become a solution for me. An actor that comes in and is undirectable, couldn't memorize their lines, is too nervous, is trying to get lucky, they're a problem. They've just ate up 10 minutes of my day that I don't have because I only wanted to see solutions, not problems. And then there's furniture. And furniture to me is people that you have the right look, you can memorize the words, you can even muster up some emotions once in a while, but you're really not memorable. Like to me, you're as effective as a chair. Like we needed a chair in that scene, and then we needed that person to say these words of exposition. And it's okay, but to me, I've always had higher aspirations. So I want to create a place where all actors were like, very few of us, and I say this with no disrespect, ever get into the industry and be like, oh boy, I hope I do a Subway commercial.
Right.
And it's no disrespect. Subway's amazing. I've had it recently.
It's just not the big dream.
It's not the big dream, right? We want to tell stories. We want to be characters. We want to change people's hearts and minds. And to do that, it just takes a higher level of understanding of story.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the genesis of all of that. I wanted to create a place where actors weren't trying to get lucky, weren't trying to just have the right look, and they wanted sustainability and a consistent career of growth further. It's what I've had, and I am so ridiculously thankful for the experiences and the people I've met.
Why do you feel that new actors, green actors, should attend school?
It's interesting. I had this very conversation with a couple of people this morning. Literally, the meeting I had before this was that this is an industry where a lot of people unfortunately don't know what they don't know. And I would always say, whatever you do, start with the end in mind and look at the different people that have had success. And the people that have had success, honestly, most of them, myself included, have had epic amounts of training that led to different experience, which led to different training, which led to different experience. But there's this ongoing growth. And I think too many people want to get discovered at the mall, or too many people want to be but I'm willing to learn. If somebody just believes in me first, then I'll try. And the answer is we have too many people that are already willing to try that we don't need you. And it's like, the same problem happens for everybody. All the problems in this world break down to two things. Nobody has enough time and nobody has enough money. So, fortunately, I actually think it's one of the things Canada does really well. Like student loans are 0% interest. You can't borrow money for 0% anywhere else but for education.
Yeah.
So this is the thing where people can train for no money down, and the amount of money we make on set, you can make all your money back in a gig or two.
It's true.
So it's, I look at this as a no-brainer. And also, like, as somebody who now produces and directs and things like that, I do look at training. And if I have somebody that has substantial training on their resume, I just assume they are going to be easier to work with. I'm not looking for raw talent. I'm not looking for the right look. I'm looking, film is too expensive to take chances on raw energy that doesn't really know how to sculpt itself, but to have people that understand, no, this is how stories work and this is how I serve it, and I understand how to get into character, analyze the subtext. Like, there's so many more things to it than people think.
It's true. Yes, it's definitely harder to do than people think just off the bat. They're like, oh yeah, I can act. Anyone can act. And it's, you really can't. Not just anyone can act.
No.
I know, just for fun, my brother, he thinks he really can do it. He's
Sure.
like, I can act. Like, just give me an audition. So I sent him one of my auditions
I love it.
once. And I was like, fine, do it.
Yeah.
And so him and his girlfriend, and he's really given it his all. And it was the worst thing I've ever seen. And he's really confident. And I was like, you would never get booked.
Well, no, yeah, and I think a lot of people think acting is being interesting, where it's being interested,
Right.
and a lot of people think it's, even to this day when I meet newer actors, their big thing is I just want to be able to memorize my lines better or have better emotional accessibility. And while those are both imperative, they're actually so far down the scale of what you need to know that
Right.
when I hear somebody saying those are their goals, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's your basement. That's not your ceiling. That's your basement. You need to know how to memorize the lines. You need to know how to be off book. You need to how to be living truthfully in the moment so you can conjure up the right emotional, authentic response. But if your goal is just those two things, you're aiming for the floor, and some
Yeah.
of us are flying through the ceiling, and you'll never get the chances we get.
I definitely was, worried about those couple things as well when I first started because, again, you don't know. It's like an iceberg. You're like, you need to memorize your lines and show emotion, but you don't realize everything else you have to do. And for me, and I know Hiwata as well, we talk about it all the time, when we went to school, that's when everything else that we needed to learn was shown to us because we didn't know. We were stressed about learning our lines, showing emotion, making sure, we're staying in frame, just like
Yeah.
those super, super simple things. And then we learned more about all the other stuff. And, you teach the great opera, which I won't spoil and give away for free, but it's something that, we apply to our work still today. And when I coach people, I do think now about the goal. And I never thought about the goal before until going to school. So there definitely there's many perks to going to
For
school,
sure.
for sure.
It's just about having a simplicity and a specificity and a
Yes.
template so that you never try to get lucky. You're like, I don't know how to have a bad audition. Like, I know how to do all the steps. I might not be your right pick. I might be too tall, too short, too handsome, too ugly, too whatever, but it's never he didn't behave truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
Right.
Like, I take that out of the equation. But if actors do that, then you're almost always in the short list.
It's true,
And that's
yeah.
where everybody's got to be. It's just always be in the short list. You'll get your turns.
Yeah. I mean, the industry is right now, it feels impossible to book work. I haven't gotten an audition in a while just because I feel like the industry right now is like in a lull and it's, it's coming out of the strikes still, but we were just coming out of a strike, which was really hard. And then it's not much better now. And COVID was just a little while ago. It feels like a really tough time to do anything in the industry except maybe make your own stuff.
Well, that's exactly it. So it's actually, so after you graduated, we created a second part of the program that is
Yeah.
that exact answer. So I agree with you. And if you watch it's what my career is like. I've been very lucky to work in a lot of big mainstream projects, but I've always created my own projects as well. I just shot 10 half-hour episodes of a series, and I've got pitch meetings lined up with FX and HBO. Like, this isn't something I just did for fun, but it is something I did on my own because I wasn't going to wait for the phone call to read or
Right.
ring. So I think that's what most actors need to realize in today's market. If you look at any major actor that had major success in any shows, they will tell you those days of just being an actor for hire are really hard. They can exist, but it is way harder. Those of us who are creating our own content in a world where there are so many subscription channels and cable networks and networks are trying to reinvent themselves, everybody's looking for something new, not regurgitated, and you just have to be a better storyteller. So again, like, we created a program where it's like, here's how you come up with an idea that's important to you, but also marketable. Here's how you write it, shoot it, edit it, post-production, distribution. Here's how you do all of it. And I feel like today's actor that knows that make your own movies, make your own shows.
Right.
The equipment is there, the software is there. Like it's free or affordable, and you can actually compete with the multi-million dollar companies now for a couple $1,000s. But you still need to know how to do it at their level, and that's the part that people sometimes miss.
Yeah. How do you use your role as an educator and a mentor to new ethical actors in an industry that is infamous for
Yeah.
people abusing power?
Yeah, it's fascinating you say that. I'm a really, I have, my experiences over 30 years and I'm going to say I'm jaded, but I will say I have found two types of people. I have found the best people in the world and the worst people in the world. And we live in a time of Spotify information in terms of people are very selective with what kind of facts they want to believe or what kind of information. And I think it's really unfortunate. I started this on this planet where we just had a base level of facts we all basically agreed to, and we don't have that anymore. So one thing what I'm really fortunate about, I've always been able to look in the mirror and know that I have altruistic ideas. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people that trust me with their parts of the journey. I have a tremendous amount of reverence for story.
Right.
So one of the things that I would say, some of the things I do, because one, I'm a big fan of constantly evolving myself in terms of education. So I'm a big fan of learn it, teach it, apply it.
Yeah.
The more I teach it, the more I understand it, the better I'm able to apply it, and therefore the better I'm able to teach it. And as long as I always remember that cycle and circle, it seems to work. And you probably would have even noticed in your cohort that we don't go through great lengths to. We don't do a lot of performative measures in terms of diversity, in terms of what we attract. But Story Institute, without question, is one of the most diverse experiences I've ever had in my life.
Definitely.
In terms of ethnicity, age, orientation. We have, what I really love about what we do is that we seem to, with our concept, with our messaging, we attract people that have different social or political backgrounds or age or ethnic or orientation, all sorts of diversity, and yet we all seem to be able to come together, share ideas respectfully, confidently. It's a beautiful thing, and I love that. We talk about it a lot in terms of the admissions team and myself, just about the culture of the place has to be. We navigate a really delicate thing because we recreate human behavior, and as we all know, that can create a lot of emotions. So playing a safe place of kindness, inclusivity, if we create that culture, people will feel like they're in the best place possible to do their work. And if we always move at the pace of the slowest person and we all work together, I think those are just some of the core ideas that we've had at Story Institute from day one. And I think it's really paid off. I'm always floored with how much diversity we have in every way you could ever fathom it without trying. It's just what we attract.
Right. I think it's really important too when I think about my time, and I'm sure it's only gotten better, is overall it was a safe place because acting is so vulnerable.
Yeah.
Especially when you're learning it for the first time and you know you're bad when you start, right? Like no one's great when you begin. And Hewad and I were talking about that too. We were talking about our thinking back to week 1 and how bad we must have been.
Oh, you guys are fine.
I don't know. We saw some, audition tapes and stuff, and we were like, oof, those aren't good, but that was our beginning process. And here you are learning how to emote and learning how to also just the technical side of being inside a camera and then watching it back sometimes in front of everybody. All of that is very vulnerable and very personal in a way. And so to do it in front of all your other classmates, but also have them do it in front of you, you do need to create a safe space, and you do need to have friends, and that just happens naturally being with them for 6 months. And it wasn't all perfect on my account, that time. I had a little bit of, I'm a big personality, not everyone gets along with that, that's okay. Sometimes two big personalities don't get along either. That's okay.
That does happen.
Yeah.
You were fantastic. You honestly,
thank you.
sincerely, you were wonderful.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to hear because I did have a great time.
Yeah.
And there's just a couple people. I don't get along with everyone. I'm an honest person. Some people don't like that. Oh, well, you know?
Yeah.
But overall, I had a great time and I learned a lot. I want to know, because I believe I'm right, but you created the curriculum, right?
I did, yeah.
So how did you do that? Because that's not easy.
No, it's not. And it's actually, you'd asked me earlier, one of the, starting schools in general, one of the biggest challenges was the curriculum really is infinitely different than anything else that is out there. But I've also, so I'm a little bit on the spectrum, so that's a full reveal. So I always have had like a passion or a necessity to really understand things at a different level. And one of the things that never always aligned with me when I worked at other schools was we'd have all these little sort of spatterings of 6 weeks of this, 8 weeks of that. And it was, to me, when I analyzed it, I always felt we were teaching people something just enough so that they could understand they don't know it, but then we'd move on.
Yeah.
So it was really easy for people to go, oh, that makes sense. And then we would stop. And for me as an educator, I was like, oh, it's not about them making sense. Like anybody can understand a thing, but if you can't do it, then it's just something you have an awareness of, but not an ability to replicate or to apply. So with the curriculum, I broke it down. And again, back when I was designing the logo, at the same time, I was thinking about, okay, well, if I just taught, what are the most important things to teach? And instead of teaching like the 20, 30 things that I was teaching at other schools, what if I just broke it down to like the 5 things you needed to know? And there's not 5 things, but what are the 5 subcategories you need to know? And how can I work in such levels of depth that you can do those 5 things at such a high level that you understand there's still more training required afterwards if you want to keep expanding and growing your career. But if you had these 5 things, you'd be able to work. And I'm confident with the 5 things we teach, I'm like, yeah, if you learn those 5 things at this level for 6 months, yes, you can do this. And if you do the full year, you don't have to wait for your phone to ring. You're the one making the calls instead of waiting for the calls. And I think that for me is always, I've had times where even this last summer, I just wrote a television series. I wrote a movie. I've got another movie coming up that I'm acting in and another one that I'm writing. Like I've been busy and it's been super busy, but it's also very likely that I'll hit a huge dry patch again. Yeah. And it's like when I do, it's like, okay, I have projects that I'm also developing and getting financing for and development. So I'm never going to have a break because I'm always working that pendulum of mainstream and independent.
Is that how you deal with, I guess, because there is a huge side of the film industry for actors that I don't think gets taught in school, period, or talked about too much, which is the mental health of it.
Oh, huge.
And so is that keeping busy and always having your own work sort of how you get through a lot of the mental health struggles that can come with those slow times?
We actually, yeah. So we talked a lot about the sort of the first 6 months we do with the 5 things. We actually have a day dedicated in the second 6 months, which really is dedicated to idea creation and mental health because there's so many components of it in terms of converting external motivation to internal motivation. Like it's easy to have your tires pumped and be like, oh, I'm so excited because that person's yelling exciting words at me. But it's like, okay, now you're at home by yourself. The phone hasn't rang for 2 weeks. Yes. How do you stay excited? Yes. So there's a case of, oh, we actually have a way to show you how to do that. I have to do it. I have to be excited every day, regardless if everybody else is excited around me. So there's a day dedicated to that. So to me, that day is just as important as our career planning day in the first 6 months. The ideation and the motivation and the staying focused and the mental health component of that one day in the second 6 months, to me, is equally, it's just, and it's a difference. Like nobody teaches it because it's not as fun to say as, well, we're doing improv or we're doing clown or we're doing, text analysis. These are really, really important things, but there's so much more to this craft than that.
Yeah, definitely there is. I think about a story that I think it was you that said, not a good story, but it was just a personal experience where you got booked for something. I think it was voice. And you signed the contract, things were about to go, and then they took the job away from you.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just hanging out with a person they replaced me with, who's a very good friend of mine. Yeah.
I just think that is the epitome of, the worst thing that could happen to you in the job, because you've dealt with the, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this, the excitement, then you booked it, then you feel amazing, you're picturing your life and the money and all of that. That's
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And then all taken away
And it's
from
just
you.
gone.
How did you not quit in that moment?
For me, and again, I've always been a big fan of multiple revenue streams. I've been a big fan of, having different things to do in the industry, because that's happened lots. I have been booked or unbooked or been first or second choice and lost out to somebody else for other reasons, to the tune of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars over my career. So it's a weird thing to be, I sit here now not mortgage free, but if I had a perfect score, I'd be mortgage free years ago.
Right.
So it's just a case of, for me, it's always remembering that I'm the hero of my own story. And I have never watched a movie or a TV show where the hero didn't have struggles or obstacles they had to overcome. So I have to constantly remind myself, if somebody's watching my story right now, and you never know who's watching, they're watching me go through some big struggles right now, or the loss of a really big gig or whatever it was, and to just remember to stay focused, stay hungry, stay good, stay kind. If I do that, according to every movie I grew up with, it works out well in the end. I mean, we won't know till I'm dead, but I'm convinced it works.
Yeah. Well, you have to be convinced in this industry, or else there's no point in you
There's
being
no
in
point. Yeah, you got to believe in yourself. You believe in you, and then others will follow. You have to be first.
And if they don't follow, as long as you believe in yourself, that's literally all you need.
Well, true. Some of my favorite artists are people that, like, whenever you see these really big successful things, like I even look at Deadpool Wolverine, which we just saw. I think it's one of the best movies in the last 10 years. I think it's that good. It's great. You didn't like it?
I didn't watch it. I've never liked Marvel or DC.
Yeah, I actually would say that's fair. I actually think from a storytelling point, from a Marvel it's actually a non-Marvel film.
Okay.
It's actually I actually think it transcends being a Marvel movie, and it's just a great film that happens to have a Marvel logo. But I know, like, even there, the reason I bring it up is that it's shattering records. It's this multi-billion-dollar franchise, but Ryan Reynolds couldn't get it made. He'd already played Deadpool in one of the original X-Men movies with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and they had a hard time getting the original Deadpool. I think it took 10 years.
Wow.
So it's like, even the most successful things in this life get hit with so much rejection, and it's a case of, you can hit that rejection and say, okay, I guess it was a bad idea, or you can say, okay, well, what part was rejected? Do I need to analyze who I'm pitching it to? Do I analyze what I'm pitching? What do I need to change? Do I change who I'm selling it to, or what I'm selling, or whatever it is? But as long as you have those analysis, even here, like the show I just shot, it took me 9 years to get that one. But it took 9 years. Now I think it's actually going to be one of the most successful shows on television. And it took us 9 years to get anybody, even to this point. There's going to be conversations where people don't get it. And I'm like, everybody will come to me after it's on air and they'll say, oh my gosh, this was genius. And I'll be like, that's not what you said when you said no.
And if you're listening, stay tuned, because we will be talking about it later on. I've got a whole section for it.
Oh, brilliant.
I want to know, because you talked about building the curriculum earlier, and a lot of it is to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, with personal experience, maybe?
Yeah.
Like your experiences and how you found acting to be the most convenient and best, and then teaching it. I have two questions with that. One, why not do, what other schools tend to do, which is sort of teach an array of techniques and methods, and then have the actors decide, oh, I like this, oh, I like that, oh, I'll do this. Like, why is it that you decided this is the way and this is what's going to resonate with other actors?
Sure, that's a great question. That's a fantastic question. So one of my teachers that was really influential in my early development was a gentleman named Larry Moss. Larry coached Hilary Swank, Richard Dreyfuss, Leo DiCaprio. So to have somebody like that I got to know and work with on multiple occasions was really advantageous. And one of the things he shared with me was that he was a fan of all of the different great methods or techniques, but he found a common core element of all of them, and that was really what his teaching was. And I've adopted more of that idea that there are elements of Meisner, Stanislavski, Adler, like there's elements of all of that in it. Even if you look at what I call the great opera, if you look at Uta Hagen's her bullet point is like, oh, it's kind of a different version of the great opera, and it is. It's, there's such a common core language. So for me, I've never been orthodox about any technique in terms of that's the way it has to be done. I just think we recreate the human experience through an enhanced understanding of the human experience, and that can be done with lots of different methods, lots of different ideas, but there is a common core science to it. There is what motivates intentions. What is the perceived risk reward? What are the relationships? How is your relationship with the environment? How does the time of day or time of life or whatever, like there's just common core language that all techniques use. And at Story Institute, we just use that common language and then encourage somebody, if they're like, I really like this, but I really like the Meisner version of it. Awesome. When you graduate, you should do some more Meisner and see if that takes it to a different place for you. Or it might actually inspire you to take a different method to see if maybe you can expand your own skill sets or likes.
And so that leads into part 2 of that question. Because I just think about myself and, people are like, yeah, Meisner this and that, other that. And I'm like, I didn't learn any of that. I don't really know what Meisner's technique is, and I don't know what this is. So why did you choose not to teach the history of acting?
Yeah, it's actually, it was in the original curriculum. It fell of lesser value than the things that made the list. So, when I got started, most actors would do serious full-time training for 4 to 6 to 8 years. Now everybody wants to do it in 6 or 12 months. And when you're left with those time constraints, you have to say, okay, at the end of the day, what's the most important? So I have to say, what's my end goal? My end goal is to get people working. So I found what are the things that are non-negotiable? You need these to get them working. And the history of it, unfortunately, fell off the thing. That being said, I do, and probably more so today than even before, I do try to, accent my lessons with little pieces of history or ideas that people could. I'm actually also a bigger fan of, I find a lot of people that get religious about a certain method would have been better served by just going and searching human behavior. Like I think of things like, Super Freakonomics or Simonson XY or Man's Search for Meaning. There's all these great like human experience books or ideas. A book called Breathe. I just read it. I should remember what it is. But like there's all these fascinating books about human experience, human nature. I think it's as equally important as replicating or adopting a certain method.
I want to know, because you are both a TV actor and a voice actor.
Yes.
And though they're both forms of acting, they're very different forms of acting.
Yeah.
How do both forms of acting fulfill you, but in different ways?
That's a great question. So one of the things I really enjoy about voice acting is, I get to be things that don't reflect my cosmetic. So, I got to be one of the X-Men. I've been puppy dogs. I've been hamsters. I've been, supernatural kung fu experts, all these different things. And they're things I would never get to play if they wanted my physical appearance to be a part of the character. So that's one of the things that I've really loved about it. I also love I'm fascinated by voice. I'm fascinated by the idea of taking everything we do and doing it only through sound. I think that's a really cool way to share stories. No different than mime doing it purely through visual. So I'm a student and a fan of all these different things. So the opportunity to get really into voice was cool. And I was partially raised by television. So I love being a part of that medium, and movies are always fun. I still like stage. I still do some stage mocap. So I just like storytelling, and I always like the fascinating subtle technical differences between them all.
You teach voice acting, that's part of the program, and it was never something I was interested in, never something I cared to do, didn't even really think about it being an option. And it was something we had to do at Story. If, you know, you want to be a part of the school, Tuesdays, at least it was Tuesdays then.
It's Wednesdays now, but yes, it was Tuesdays.
Yes, and it's like, that's what you got to do. And it was something because I never thought about it, I never thought I could do it, and I never thought I'd be good at it. And I certainly wasn't the best in the class, let me tell you, I was not. And I wasn't the worst either, but it was just so out of my comfort zone that I struggled a lot of the time with stepping out of it, with being comfortable just being a voice.
Yeah.
Because I'm so comfortable being on camera, using my whole body and showing off the emotion, where the voice, you have to do all of that with just your voice. And yeah, you're being silly, you're using your body, but no one sees that part of it. And so it was a whole new experience for me. And still today, it's not the way I want to make my career, but if it ends up being that way, I'm not going to be mad about it. But I do have an agent for it, but it still makes me nervous. When I get a voice audition and I have to come down here and do it, I get way more nervous for it because it's just never something that I imagined.
Yeah, I actually was the same way. When I first got started, there was a wonderful, she still works to this day. Her name's Kathy Weselek. She was teaching a class, and I signed up to do 4 different acting teachers, and Kathy was one of them. And the other 3 were all film and television. And then I told them I'm going to skip the voiceover because I have no desire to do cartoons. I'm going to be a movie star. And Kathy was like, well, and we talked for about 10 minutes. She's like, you paid for it. You might as well do it. It's fun. And she became a good friend, and I actually fell in love with the idea of it. And I've since voiced numerous animations and video games and commercials and stuff like that. Like, I'm super grateful for that opportunity. But again, it was a case of, similar to what we talked about earlier, I didn't know what I didn't know. Yeah. And, you know, I was the kind of person that would be afraid to sing Happy Birthday until somebody else started singing it, and then I'll jump in. So I feel like I was always a little bit afraid of that. And then the more I do it, the less afraid of it I am. Like, when I'm in a voice session now, I'm like, oh, this is just a playground. Yeah. And you're allowed to make mistakes, and you can have fun and be silly, and it's amazing. And I feel really lucky to have that in my repertoire.
Yes, and I'm happy to have, you know, like a voice reel and stuff to show that I can do it, even just to myself in the moments where I'm like, I don't know about it, and then I listen to my reel and I'm like, you know, it's not bad. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Hipsterverse.
Sure.
Now. So you recorded season 1 a while ago, right?
Quite a while ago, and we now refer to it as the web series because we originally called what we just shot season 2, but we've decided to relaunch it as season 1 because there's so many new elements to it. So we've already relaunched ourselves. So I'm both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland rolled into one. So we've just reinvented ourselves.
Great package.
It is a good package. And no disrespect to any of those 3.
Okay, well, talk about Hipsterverse. What's it about? What's the premise? All of that. Because, I mean, I know what it is, but...
Sure. So Hipsterverse for me, Hipsterverse was an idea based around the idea. I'm somebody who's never really identified as a team person in terms of social or political leaning. So I'm not left leaning. I'm not right leaning. I'm not a centrist. I have ideas and I know what works for my kitchen table. And I actually have friends that all identify all across the different sort of spectrum of different types of things you could be. And I miss the days where we could just all speak to each other kindly and respectfully and have fun and joke. And so it's a comedy series. It would fall under Parks and Rec or Office in terms of tone. Like, it says and does things that make people feel a little uncomfortable at times, but it does everything with so much kindness and with an underlying message of we are diverse, racially, from different generational to gender to a million and one different ways to identify characteristics. But I think we have more in common than the things that separate us. So the underlying message is that everybody likes coffee, and if we could all just sit down and have a cup of coffee, maybe we could all get along again. So it's not about trying to go back to the old days, but it's also saying the current days also suck. The old days were not good. There was lots of bad bad stuff. We needed to fix the old days, but we also didn't fix them, so we don't have to be stuck here. And the whole concept of Hipsterverse is it's a coffee shop. It's about a Generation X guy who opens up a coffee shop, and then he just wants to have his own individuality, but everybody around him is such an individual, it makes him uncomfortable. So there's a lot of hypocrisy and self-righteousness. I guess if I were to also say it a different way, the idea is that it doesn't matter what your age, race, gender, generation, whatever it is, we're all problematic. We've all got good things, we've all got bad things, but let's try to treat each other kindly, and let's try to grow together, and let's all try to understand before we try to be understood. And that's probably what Hipsterverse is really about. And then
it's a comedy.
And it's ridiculous. It's super ridiculous. It talks about everything that you're not allowed to talk about, but with kindness and respect, but also an incredible amount of uncomfortable comedy that I think we're seeing a lot. Like, it's funny, like in the last couple of months I watched or I listened to Childish Gambino and Eminem both release new albums that are basically the musical version of Hipsterverse.
Oh, wow.
The idea
Too bad you can't use them.
Yeah, I know. And that's but the idea behind both of their albums is it's kind of like, let's stop being afraid of each other, and let's, stop worrying about who's trying to cancel who and who's afraid to talk, and let's just be humans. It's the same, The Office is re-releasing a spin-off.
Yeah.
The TV show Cheers, which was big in the 80s, is coming back. Like, there's this whole idea of let's start congregating as a community again. It's coming back, and Hipsterverse is hopefully a part of that messaging. That let's talk, let's listen, let's be kind, and then let's also laugh our asses off while we do it.
Yeah, and it's really fun to get those messages and laugh at the same time.
100%.
And it's a sitcom, right? So it's like 20, 30 minutes?
Yeah, 22 minutes. We got 10 episodes in the can. I'm actually in an editing session tomorrow for it. It's really good, and it's fun. I got my 3 young daughters. I've got daughters that are 8, 9, and 12. All 3 of them are in the show with me. They're probably the funniest thing in the whole series. It's great. We were able to hire 40-plus students to shoot the series, so I was able to give work to 40-plus students and teachers.
That's actually a question I have, which is, how did you cast? So you use students, but I guess did you still host auditions to see what role would fit best for them?
Yeah. We did some auditions, and then we had just workshopping the shoot because we knew we were coming up. So we had different students come through, or I had different students, old alumni, reach out and say, "Hey, I remember that project. Is there any way I could be a part of it?" And I was like,
I remember that project. Next time, season 3.
Yeah,
I could be a part of it.
I would love for you to be. I think you would kill it.
To.
Yeah,
and she's funny.
I've met her. Funny. No, I'm just kidding. She's great. She is great. I'm teasing.
Yes, teasing.
He was amazing.
Yes.
No, I'd love you guys both to be in it. You guys would both be killer on that show. For sure.
Yay.
We'll make a commitment right now.
Yes.
For the next season, you guys are in.
Deal.
Okay, done.
Love it.
Done.
I got your work. You're welcome.
Yeah, she gets 15%.
Yes, I'll take it. Of $0, I assume?
No, the next season is going to be full...
Right.
Everything's going to be big, yeah. So we're going to do a big thing. Yeah. So let's let's do it. And that's my goal is this is a town where I think a lot of us are trying to we're trying to get lucky or try to have the right look. And I'm like, be lucky, have a good look, but also create your opportunities, man. Be smarter than everybody else. Be a solution. Don't be a problem. And heaven forbid, don't be furniture. And I think too many actors in this town are okay with being furniture.
Yeah.
And then they wonder why, how come the same 20 people get all the work? Because they're solutions, man.
Right.
They think about it differently than you. They work harder than you. They work smarter than you. And like when you're at home frustrated, they have the internal motivation. They're either at the gym, they're in a class, they're making their own project. They're just doing stuff all the time. It's the same with me. Like I have people that look at me and they get mad, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm also doing things all the time. Like I didn't get lucky.
Yeah.
And I fail a lot. I fail often. I'm one of the things I'm doing is I'm writing Hallmark films. I get so many notes on my Hallmark films, it's crazy. But they keep calling and I keep writing.
Yeah.
So it's never like I write something and like, this is perfect, don't change a thing. But it's just a constant ability to stay focused and not get upset or hurt by notes or rejection. And it's just like, no, that's part of the process. And it's not notes or rejection. It's like a bunch of people trying to make a story stronger. And if we keep remembering that story is the most important thing, these aren't cheap shots or these aren't digs at me. These are just opportunities for me to be better.
Even in the audition classes that we did and later on being directed by directors and stuff, when they give you a note, I always felt fortunate that I knew from the beginning, even just subconsciously and consciously, that it's not about me, it's about the job. And any boss has notes for their employees.
For sure.
And even though I am the job, it's also separate from me, because I'm not playing Alexia, I'm playing a character that the director has a vision for.
Absolutely.
So I was lucky to always sort of understand that, and when given a note, harsh or not, I was able to just know it's for the work, and it's not, you're not hating on me, it's not a reflection of me. And then I think that made me, a better actor for it, because then I was able to hopefully understand the direction and then apply it better. But yeah, it's difficult for people sometimes to understand that, and there's things about the industry that I find hard to understand, but I'm also 21 and I have years to learn.
You get lots of time. That's exactly it. And just appreciating that it's a journey and it's not a destination.
Yeah.
I'd say you're successful. So
Thanks.
keep being successful.
Yay.
And that's just understanding, you're 21 and you're doing the right things. Keep doing the right things and it happens. You just got to stay on the train.
So with Hipsterverse, season
one. So we're going to call it season one.
Season 1. It is in editing right now.
It's in editing right now. We're releasing an album with it. So we wrote 20 original songs.
Wow.
So there's two songs per episode. You only get little snippets of them in the show, but we're releasing an album. We're releasing a 10-episode series. We have live shows in development.
Wow, amazing.
Like it's a whole empire. Like it's not just a little thing.
So season 1 the plan is to have it be on one of the big networks right away, or will it be released somewhere else first?
Our goal, our hope is what our strategy is that we'd like it to be on air by this spring. So that's our target. We're expecting to have a bit of a bidding war. That's our expectation based on the conversations we've had. And then what we'll do is we'll hopefully pick something that our goal is to pick somebody that not only will give it the widest view and also the most monetary return, but also somebody who's willing to invest in future seasons.
Right.
So it's a smart idea. It's a one location shoot with small cast, small crew. Like it's an economic. So it's, again, when I make a show, I don't just think about what's a fun story I want to tell. I also think, but what are some elements I can do that make it appetizing for other people? And when I say it actually costs less to make this than most shows, it's one location, it's a small cast, it's a small crew. It's like, oh, that's how like Hallmark has really leaned into that sort of a thing. And I'm like, oh, I lean into it too. And that it's just common core language that makes more opportunities possible. Yeah.
It is a very exciting thing to have. First of all, just the fact of having something that you wrote on paper be written and then have it be an actual thing is just that alone is really cool. And now you're wanting to scale it on something big, which is really amazing.
The people that we've had that I can't say right now, but the people that have been guiding us, coaching us, or keeping tabs on us are some of the biggest names in the industry.
Wow.
And it's flattering to have people that I look at as award winning on the highest level, knowing that we're doing what we're doing, and have them have such flattering words for the scripts and for the concept. It's it feels like it's a nice seat at a table, and we're not necessarily sitting down yet, but it feels like a nice invitation to sit at that table. So
yeah, amazing. Okay, I have a couple fun questions before we end off. What TV show or movie would childhood you love to have been in of that era?
Sure. Oh gosh. Oh, there's so many. I'm going to say a couple. I'm going to rattle off a couple quick ones.
Go ahead.
Goonies for sure. Back to the Future. Star Wars. Princess Bride. And Indiana Jones.
Love. Okay, now, what TV show or movie would current day you love to be a part of?
Oh gosh, great question. I'd love to, anything in the Star Wars or Lord of the Rings universe would be amazing. Oh gosh.
And it can be present day work as well.
It can be present day. Oh, I'd also like to do
in this hypothetical. There's no rules.
I like anything in like an extension of the Breaking Bad universe would be so insanely cool. I'm a big fan of everything they did there. Yeah, I like what's happening. I like shows like The Boys. I like Handmaid's Tale. I'm actually a really big fan of shows that make really heavy social commentary. The Morning Show. Like, there's all these shows out there that are just really in your face and asking questions and
Yeah.
forcing society to look in the mirror. I like those kind of things. They're fun.
Yes.
They can be controversial at times, but I like that they're asking respectful questions and making us think as a society. I'd love to be a part of that.
Where can people find your personal social media and then also Story Institute?
Sure. So probably the best place for me on social media is just Instagram, actor Michael Coleman on Instagram. And then Story Institute is really just Story Institute at TikTok or Instagram. I think Michael Coleman probably has TikTok and everything too. I'm pretty sure he does.
And
But
then website?
website
Story
is
Institute.
storyinstitute.ca. And then we're launching a really cool new program this fall for youth as well called Hollywood North Actors Academy.
Oh.
And it's a junior and a senior program, but it's like making your own films, it's animation, it's acting for film and TV, understanding it's teaching kids how to have an adult level of opportunity while they're kids. And it's
Right.
educating their parents as well. I wish me and my mom had that when I got started. So those are, you can find that at storyinstitute.ca.
Amazing, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me and
This was
answering all my
brilliant.
questions. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on Film People.